Hello? Where are you? We have our final meeting for tomorrow's wedding, remember? You haven't shown up, and I was wondering what happened. About that. I'm not coming. What? I was speechless at Yannick's unexpected response. What do you mean? I don't understand. I mean, I'm not coming to your place. I've decided to call off the marriage. What are you talking about? It's incredibly rude to say such a thing the day before the ceremony, isn't it? After thinking it over, I realized marrying someone like Kristen just wouldn't work out. Being a woman and yet holding a higher position and earning more than me. I couldn't stand living with that kind of resentment for the rest of my life. Excuse me? He should have been aware of my job and status all along. Despite the occasional sarcastic remarks, I believed he was trying to understand in his own way. And yet, why bring this up now? So, I've decided to marry the girl I'm currently dating. I just got the marriage license issued. Marry? Not with me, but with another woman? I couldn't grasp the meaning of his words immediately. He was seeing someone else while with me? So, I was being two-timed? The woman's voice over the phone before? Had he already got a marriage license? As I searched for words, Yannick, mistaking my silence for shock, continued with a sneer. I prefer a younger, more docile girl who sweetly relies on me rather than an aged, charmless woman like you. Ditching an old lady like you was the right choice. Hearing those words, all the various emotions swirling in my head vanished. Then, my honest thoughts at the moment came out. Oh, is that so? Thanks for breaking it off. Huh? My name is Kristen. I'm a 40-year-old corporate employee. I've been working at the same company for almost 20 years since graduating from college. The workplace is filled with great people, and I enjoy my work. As a result of my good performance, I currently serve as the head of the sales department. While I was fulfilled by my rewarding job in a supportive environment, I actually had a fiancé. Somewhat unexpectedly, I thought I might remain single forever, but then I met Yannick, introduced by my parents. Being an only child, I understood my parents' concerns about my prolonged singleness. With those feelings, I started a relationship with Yannick on the premise of marriage, which eventually led to our engagement. Yannick was a salesperson at one of my dad's client companies. My dad and the president of Yannick's company are old acquaintances, often going out for drinks even now. Yannick was reputed to be an outstanding employee, and my dad persuaded Yannick's company president to introduce him to me. When this proposal was first made, I honestly wasn't enthusiastic. Though I had a vague desire for marriage, I wasn't keen on being set up for it. Dad, could we possibly cancel this arrangement? Honestly, I'm not seriously considering marriage right now, and I'd feel bad meeting with that mindset. Don't be like that, okay? Just think of it as an opportunity to meet someone, no need to be so formal. Despite my gentle refusal, my dad pleaded me, and I relented to meet just once. Yannick, true to his sales background, was skilled at bridging gaps between people. The conversation flowed smoothly thanks to his adept socializing, and time flew by. I thought it wouldn't be bad to meet him again. And so, our relationship continued, leading to our engagement. However, Yannick has been acting a bit strange lately. Normally, he's the same, but when it comes to work, he sometimes becomes harsh towards me. Hey, how about going out somewhere on your next day off? Maybe we can go for a drive. One day after work, I received a call from Yannick inviting me on a date. Sorry, I have to go on a business trip next week, and I'll be working on the weekend too. Can we pick another day? My company often requires me to travel for work, leading to weekend work as well. While I do get compensatory leave, it often results in mismatched schedules with Yannick. It's not uncommon for us to go over a week without seeing each other. I felt bad turning down his invitation due to my business trip, but his attitude changed immediately after I mentioned it. I see. Being a department head must keep you really busy. Guess you don't have time for me then. Although Yannick is usually pleasant, He becomes sarcastic when work prevents us from meeting. Yannick and I are the same age, but he is a manager. I don't mind our differences in position, but it seems Yannick feels inferior to me. I sensed his feelings, so I avoided discussing work to prevent such situations. However, it's now an unavoidable topic. You don't have to speak like that. I feel bad about turning down your invitation, but it's because of work. Of course, your job should come first over someone like me. Good luck then. With that, Yannick ended the call abruptly. Staring at the darkened screen of my cell phone, I sighed. I never intended to neglect Yannick because of work. Though it's true our days off don't always align, I always look forward to making the most of our time together when we can meet. I couldn't comprehend Yannick's unwillingness to understand my perspective. Even when we couldn't meet, Yannick and I kept in touch through messages. But lately, his responses have become less frequent. How about dinner after work this Friday? I found a great place. One lunchtime. I messaged Yannick. Usually, he'd read it promptly, but that day, I didn't get a reply until after 8 p.m. I have overtime on Friday, so it's not possible. His reply was brief and indifferent. Unusual for Yannick, who rarely worked late. Assuming he was just busy, I was grateful he replied during his work. That's how I saw it. Yet, this marked the beginning of a change in Yannick's behavior. I'm not good at initiating contact. So Yannick used to reach out to me more often. But now, he hardly ever contacts me. Therefore, I would send messages, but depending on the content, there might be no reply even if it's read. And if there was a reply, it was just a word or two. Work is piling up, and I'm busy. He claims to be swamped with work, facing daily overtime and increased weekend shifts. After several weeks of this, I decided to call Yannick. It's Saturday. Normally, Yannick would be off work too. I called several times, but there was no answer. Unable to leave a voicemail, I kept listening to the persistent ringing. Just as I was about to hang up, Yannick finally answered. What? Yannick's voice was quite indifferent. It even sounded a bit irritated. Are you okay now? We haven't seen each other in a while, so I thought I'd call. If it's not urgent, can I hang up? I'm swamped with work right now. Yannick seemed eager to end the call, which felt odd to me. He claimed to be at work, but the background sounded lively, not like an office environment. It's not urgent, but you haven't been replying to my messages lately, so I was worried. Haven't I told you? I'm busy with work piling up. You, as a department head, Kristen, should understand this, right? I want to focus on my work. Yannick sighed heavily, clearly wanting to get off the phone. His irritation was palpable, and his tone was more biting than usual. Continuing the conversation seemed futile. I see. Just take care not to overdo it. Yeah, then. As he was about to hang up, a voice came through from his end. Hey Yannick, who's on the phone? The voice was sugary and elongated. Unmistakably a woman's. Who? Before I could ponder further, the call ended. Was I mistaken? Yet, the voice clearly called out Yannick's name. Informally, by his first name. Was Yannick truly at work? My mind was filled with questions. We continued to lead our mismatched lives. Honestly, I was starting to question the meaning of marrying Yannick. Doubts had crept into my mind since our last phone call. Should I go through with the marriage or call it off? The wedding date was already set. And if I were to cancel, sooner would be better. Until now, despite occasionally getting upset over work-related topics, we had good times together on our days off. Yet, our relationship suddenly deteriorated, seemingly due to Yannick's increased overtime and weekend work. Avoiding me under the pretext of work made me wonder if he was having an affair. Such suspicions began to arise. The sound of a woman's voice in the background of the call also raised concerns. To clear my mind of these feelings, I decided to focus on what I could do at the moment. I made up my mind to do just that. Even after that, Yannick's attitude remained unchanged. Our communication was mostly through messages, with hardly any phone calls. Yet, Yannick never brought up anything definitive about calling off the wedding. Given that relatives and acquaintances had been invited, we couldn't just stop preparing for the wedding. It seemed unlikely that Yannick, who was always busy with work, was making any progress with the preparations on his own. Just to be sure, I contacted the venue, but as I suspected, there was no sign that Yannick had been in touch with the staff. I found myself alone, moving forward with the preparations for our wedding. Finally, it was the day before the wedding. I had spent time preparing for tomorrow. Today, Yannick was supposed to come to my house for our final meeting. Today, we had to talk in person. But he was nowhere to be found past our scheduled time. Calling him, the background noise suggested he was out. Hello? Yannick? Where are you? We have our final meeting for tomorrow's wedding, remember? You haven't shown up, and I was wondering what happened. About that. I'm not coming. What? I was speechless at Yannick's unexpected response. What do you mean? I don't understand. I mean, I'm not coming to your place. I've decided to call off the marriage. What are you talking about? It's incredibly rude to say such a thing the day before the ceremony, isn't it? I was confused. Truthfully, I hadn't been entirely looking forward to it. But canceling the day before would cause inconvenience for so many people. I'd have to contact the venue and notify relatives and guests about the cancellation. The prospect of dealing with the aftermath was more pressing in my mind than the sadness or shock of not marrying Yannick. Ignoring my silence, Yannick continued. After thinking it over, I realized marrying someone like Kristen just wouldn't work out. Being a woman and yet holding a higher position and earning more than me. I couldn't stand living with that kind of resentment for the rest of my life. Excuse me? He should have been aware of my job and status all along. Despite the occasional sarcastic remarks, I believed he was trying to understand in his own way. Yet now, he was bringing this up. So, I decided to marry the girl I'm currently dating. I even got the marriage license issued just now. Marrying? Not with me, but with another woman? I couldn't immediately grasp the meaning of his words. Was he seeing someone else while with me? So, I was being two-timed? The woman's voice over the phone before? Had he already got a marriage license? As I searched for words, Yannick, mistaking my silence for shock, continued with a sneer. I prefer a younger, more docile girl who sweetly relies on me rather than an aged, charmless woman like you. Ditching an old lady like you was the right choice. Hearing those words, all the various emotions swirling in my head vanished. And then, my honest thoughts at the moment came out. Oh, is that so? Thanks for breaking it off. Huh? Yannick, who must have expected me to be upset, seemed taken aback by my unexpected reaction. Honestly, I've been wondering if it was right to go through with the marriage. Thanks to your outrageous behavior, I can now retaliate without holding back. Thank you. What? Huh? Wait, Kristen, what do you mean? I couldn't comprehend Yannick's flustered state, having betrayed me first. Did he expect me to cry and cling to him? The thought of regarding Yannick as my fiancé was utterly gone. We have nothing to do with each other now, we're complete strangers. Don't ever call me again. Goodbye. Though Yannick seemed to be saying something on the other end, I mercilessly ended the call. Perhaps it was for the best that the marriage didn't proceed with lingering doubts. However, canceling the ceremony would mean being swamped with various follow-up tasks. Thinking about that, I felt I couldn't let it go without getting back at Yannick in some way. I decided to seek revenge. About a week after the wedding was called off, Yannick called me. His voice sounded frantic. Hey! What's going on? He immediately raised his voice as I answered the call. You don't need to shout, I can hear you fine. What do you want? I told you not to call me. This isn't the time for that. There's a big problem at work. Kristen, you must have done something. A big problem? What exactly? When I pressed him for answers, Yannick was at a loss for words. Right now, Yannick must be wearing a look of frustration. At work, there's a rumor that I was two-timing. The only one who'd do something like this is you, Kristen. Were you trying to get revenge? How vindictive! It's not a rumor, it's the truth. And since we invited colleagues from both our companies to the wedding, it's natural they'd be curious why it was suddenly called off. That might be true, but I was even called in by the president today. He probably wants to make me out to be the villain no matter what. It seemed like Yannick was trying to come up with reasons to blame me, even if he had to force them. However, regarding the breaking off of this engagement, Yannick is undoubtedly at fault. I responded with a firm and resolute attitude. Well, of course. My dad must have mentioned it. What do you mean? Why would your dad come into this? In fact, my dad is a president too. He's acquainted with Yannick's company president, and the two, having hit it off, also interact privately. Given the situation, it was only natural for my dad to discuss with the president the cancellation of the wedding due to Yannick's selfish reasons. I calmly relayed this fact to Yannick. What? Your dad is the president of that big company? That's a major client of ours. Didn't I mention it? Dad originally intended to pass the company to my future husband. He wanted me to marry someone capable. But no matter how professionally competent someone is, if their character is terrible, it's useless. My dad, who dotes on me, had somewhat old-fashioned views, planning for my husband rather than me to inherit his role. Since I understood Dad's thought, I tried hard to marry Yannick. But realizing this now, the thought seems absurd, and I can't help but laugh. So, if I had married you, I could have been the next president of that company. That's no longer possible. No, it's not impossible. After a pause, Yannick, as if having made up his mind, made a shocking proposition. Kristen, marry me. What? I'll divorce my current wife. Let's get married. His irrational suggestion brought a dry laugh to my lips. Are you out of your mind? Why would I marry a man who easily switches between women? Think about it. We once considered marrying each other. We can make it work. Trying to appease me, Yannick continued in a softer tone. But I wouldn't be fooled. I decided to play my another trump card. Stella, was it? You're planning to abandon such a young and pretty girl to marry an older woman just for her money? Hearing the name Stella, Yannick fell silent. He was probably wondering how I knew her name. What are you talking about? Who's Stella? Kristen, you must be misunderstanding something. Did you think I wouldn't find out? When your overtime and weekend work suddenly increased, and you started avoiding me, it was obvious something was up. Yannick fell silent again, likely searching for an excuse. Not giving him the chance to respond, I pressed on. Your affair with Stella, the new employee at your company, was already rumored because you were so close. I hired a detective to investigate thoroughly. A detective? You did something so sneaky. Yannick's sudden outburst, after his previous attempts to ingratiate himself, was startling. You were the one who betrayed me first. Don't get angry with me. But all this sneaking around. No, this must be your way of showing love, right? You did this to alleviate your insecurities? Yannick muttered to himself, trying to justify his thoughts. You wanted to be with me, so you investigated me. I'm sorry for getting angry. I won't do anything to worry you again, so let's get married. The way Yannick twisted facts to suit his narrative filled me with dread. The thought of spending a lifetime with such a person was nothing short of hellish. Enough. I can't marry someone who only thinks about money. Too bad you couldn't marry the president's daughter and get rich. My love for Yannick, who was entirely self-centered, had completely faded. His ability to be so self-serving was almost a talent in its own right. I don't want to talk to someone who only causes discomfort. like I said before, don't call me again. Maintaining a firm stance, I ended the call. And then, I proceeded to block all of Yannick's contact information. Keeping his contact information would only lead to situations like today. My desire to have nothing to do with Yannick had grown stronger. One day, called by my dad, I decided to visit my parents' house. While I have a good relationship with them, my busy work schedule rarely allowed visits home. Upon arrival, my dad apologized to me. "Kristen, I'm sorry. Due to my shortcomings, I've caused you pain. I apologize." It seemed Dad believed I was heartbroken over Yannick calling off the engagement. I decided to share my true feelings openly. "Don't apologize, Dad. Honestly, I'm not sad about not marrying Yannick." "What do you mean?" Dad looked up, gazing directly into my eyes. I met his gaze and conveyed my feelings. "I've always thought I might be okay remaining single. But knowing you wanted your daughter's husband to inherit, I thought marrying Yannick would fulfill your dream." "Kristen." "But with such a mindset, even if we had married, it wouldn't have lasted long. I should have been honest about my feelings. I'm sorry." I bowed to my dad, who then embraced my shoulders. "No, Kristen, you've done nothing wrong. The fault lies with me for starting this. And the ones who should be punished are Yannick and his affair partner." Dad's voice grew firmer as he spoke. His brows furrowed in anger. "There's a refreshing story I have. Do you want to hear it?" "A refreshing story?" "Yes. It's about the villains getting their comeuppance." According to Dad, Yannick and his affair partner, Stella, were facing tough times at their company. It all started when Dad told Yannick's company's president that he intended to cancel their business dealings. Dad expressed that he couldn't trust someone who cheats while engaged and callously breaks off the engagement right before the wedding. He didn't want to do business with a company that employs such a person. That's what was reportedly said. The president pleaded for reconsideration, but Dad made it clear that as long as Yannick was involved, he had no intention of doing business. "I've known the president for many years. It wasn't my intention to sever ties over something like this." Dad sighed softly. "But that wasn't the end of it." Dad continued his story. The day after he spoke with the president, he was summoned for a discussion. What was revealed was Yannick's misconduct. Yannick had good sales performance and was highly regarded by the company. However, it turns out he was taking credit for the work of his subordinates and colleagues, presenting it as his own achievement. It was revealed that Yannick's rise to the position of section chief was not due to his own abilities. Perhaps his awareness of his own lack of ability was why he felt inferior to me. I couldn't help but feel pity for him. At Yannick's company, rumors of his affair with Stella had spread. Furthermore, due to Yannick, the company was on the verge of losing a major deal. Feeling no further need to tolerate someone who had fallen so low, Yannick's subordinates and colleagues reportedly went directly to the president with evidence of his misdeeds. As a result, it seems the president was prepared to fire Yannick. The president decided to fire Yannick and demote Stella to a less significant role with a pay cut, asking to resume our business dealings. I agreed, given those terms. Dad said, smiling at me. I had no idea it had become such a big issue. I'm sorry for causing so much trouble for you and the president. It's all right for me. But I did worry about imposing my personal issues on him. However, after apologizing, he said he was relieved to have an excuse to get rid of a troublemaker, which made me feel a bit better. I expressed to my dad that I wanted to personally thank the president again. Regardless of the situation, there was no denying that the ordeal with Yannick and me had caused inconvenience. I felt terribly sorry for the president, but at the same time, I felt a sense of relief knowing Yannick and Stella had faced significant repercussions. After parting ways with Yannick, I moved out of the house I had been living in. It was to avoid any visits from Yannick, and an incident that occurred later confirmed that my decision was correct. Yannick had been lying in wait for me outside my workplace, timing it with the end of my workday. I didn't want to see his face, but if Yannick caused any trouble, I felt safer with my colleagues around. I tried to ignore him and head home, but Yannick attempted to grab my arm. Kristen, I've been looking for you. I need to talk. I swiftly dodged Yannick's hand and, with reluctance, turned to face him. He had a somewhat haggard expression. His complexion seemed to be worse for wear, almost pallid. What do you want, showing up at my workplace like this? It's a nuisance. I went to your house, but you've moved, haven't you? Since you didn't tell me where you're living now, I had to come to your workplace. I wouldn't tell a complete stranger where I've moved to. I just want to talk. There's nothing to talk about. Go home. As I tried to leave, ignoring Yannick, he stepped in front of me and suddenly bowed his head. Please, I'm begging you, help me. His action, devoid of any pride, left me stunned. This was happening in front of my workplace, a place frequented by many people. I couldn't believe Yannick would do something like this in public. Stop it. What if someone sees us? I won't stop until you listen to me. Fine. I'll listen, but that's it. Hearing my agreement, Yannick finally raised his head. Actually, I have a favor to ask. Speaking in a subdued voice, Yannick began his plea. The company told me to pay damages because the deal with your dad's company was cancelled. It was a major contract, so the amount is enormous. That's why I need your help. Although Dad had mentioned that the dealings had resumed, there might have been other repercussions that Yannick was now facing. In any case, I had no obligation to help him. You have some nerve, don't you? This is all your own doing. I can't believe you'd even think to ask me for help. But, Kristen, you're a manager, so you must be earning well, right? And even if it's not enough, your dad is a president, so you must have plenty of money, right? I thought you'd help your former fiancé. Desperate to find some way to come up with the money. He seemed to have lost all sense of propriety. His willingness to endure hardship without effort was, in a way, very Yannick-like. If the outcome was easy and favorable, that was all that mattered to him. He never considered anyone else's feelings, only his own self-centered thoughts. I decided to press the issue further, showing no mercy. How convenient for you. Why would I lend anything to someone like you? In fact, I'm going to demand compensation for breaking off the engagement. Be prepared. What? What are you saying? You're asking for even more money from someone who just told you they're struggling? Don't you have any humanity, Kristen? Seeing his hopes dashed and now facing a demand for compensation, Yannick's anger was directed squarely at me. It's only natural for you to be asked for compensation when you unilaterally broke off the engagement for selfish reasons. Plus, I'm covering the cancellation fees for the wedding. I'll be billing you for that too. Are you a demon? Don't you have any intention of helping someone who's down like this? I have no feelings of sympathy or pity for you. And stop calling me Kristen, it's too familiar. I felt a strong aversion towards Yannick, who, despite being married to Stella, continued to treat me as if I were still his woman. Despite my desire to sever all ties, I wonder why he insists on making me feel so uncomfortable. But you're my only hope. If you help me, I promise it'll be the last time. No matter what you say, it's impossible. I don't have a single penny to waste on you. If you keep bothering me, I'll call the police. If you don't like it, disappear from my sight immediately. Realizing I wouldn't budge, Yannick, with a look of despair, walked away from me, and his figure was in dejection. This would surely sever any remaining ties with Yannick. Seeing him brought low stirred no emotion in me. Confirming that I harbored no lingering feelings for Yannick, I resolved to move forward. I heard from my dad that Yannick and Stella had resorted to borrowing money to pay the demanded compensation. Unfortunately, they borrowed from disreputable sources and were now struggling with harsh collection practices. They tried to seek help from family and relatives to repay the debt, but the story of how they broke off the engagement with me had spread, and no one was willing to help them. Yannick, having lost his job, faced difficulties in finding new employment as rumors of his actions at his previous job circulated, making it hard for him to get a job in the area. Stella, while not fired, resigned due to the uncomfortable atmosphere created by the affair rumors that wouldn't die down. Both were barely getting by with part-time jobs, struggling day to day. As for me, I was as busy as ever with my work, thriving in my professional life. It seems this path suits me better after all. One day, while relaxing at my parents' house, Dad approached me with a question. "Kristen, would you consider taking over the company?" "What?" "Of course, I'm not talking about immediately. But if you're interested, I'd like to start training you as my successor." It seemed Dad had revised his thoughts after the recent events. Instead of forcing me into marriage to have my husband take over, he thought of making me his successor. For me, who was determined to forge ahead in my career, Dad's words felt like an acknowledgement of my efforts, and I was genuinely pleased. "Thank you. It seems I'm well suited to working. I may not fully understand the challenges of running a company, but I'd like to take on the challenge." Hearing my response, Dad smiled warmly at me. "I'm glad to hear you say that. It's not something that's happening right away, so for now, continue to do your best at the company you're currently serving." Encouraged by Dad's words, I resolved to work hard and someday worthily succeed him as the head of the company.